Hello, my name is Anya Bergman, and I'm the author of the Tarot Reader of Versailles. Passionate, adventurous story set against the backdrop of the French Revolution and the Great Rebellion in Ireland. And it's about two young women who come together, they collide in Paris against this dangerous backdrop and discover that together they have this incredible power with the tarot. How would I describe my book in three words? Explosive, magical, passionate. What is the most essential component of a great historical adventure? I think the most important thing is to have a balance of authenticity and storytelling when you're writing a historical adventure. So sometimes you can find yourself going down rabbit holes of research, and it's really important to make sure that none of your facts are incorrect. But at the same time, you need to be able to step back and see a big picture for the whole book, how the different strands of the story are coming together. Because ultimately, I am a storyteller, not a historical researcher, but I do love making sure my books are authentic. So I think it's stepping back and getting a kind of a big sweep of the whole picture of the period of time you're writing about. Was there any part of my research that really surprised me? Yes, I was really surprised about the story of tarot in connection to the French Revolution. So, my main character of this book, Mademoiselle Lenormand, was a real woman. She was a real tarot card reader in Paris during the French Revolution. And when I started researching her life, I was so surprised by how popular tarot was at that time and how that period of history changed how people related to tarot. So they became very, very obsessed with having their fortunes told. I think because it was a time of crisis and people wanted to know would they survive the terror, or were they going to end up under Madame Guillotine. So I was so surprised by Lenormand's life story. She started out as an orphan and she opened up a bookshop at a very young age, and had a secret tarot salon in the back of the bookshop, which I think is always a good idea for a bookshop. And yeah, she became hugely popular and read tarot for royalists and republicans alike. So yeah, I think that was the most surprising part of my research. If I could read tarot cards for one real historical figure, person I would choose is, gosh, there's so many amazing people. Actually, I don't know why this has just hit me, Queen Elizabeth I, because I think she's a really intriguing character. There's been so much written about her, the Virgin Queen, but she's quite famous for never really showing her true feelings. And I think I'd be quite intrigued to know what's really going on behind her kind of cool mask of control. You know, did she ever really fall in love? Is she really a virgin? I'd love to know that actually. And, lots of other kind of details. How did she really feel about Mary, Queen of Scots? Yeah, I think she'd be quite an intriguing person to read tarot for. Which character in the Tarot of Versailles was the most fun to write and why? That is a very, very hard question because I love all the characters. And it's hard to choose between my two female main leads of the book, Caitlin Malloy and Mademoiselle Lenormand, or Elle. And I think I'm going to pick Caitlin actually, because I write her story in first person. And so I'm writing in her voice. And she was fun to write because I went and researched journals of the period that other people had written, 18th century journals. And I was trying to kind of get her voice in the journal that I write in the book. But also, she's Irish and she's a fictional character. So I guess a little bit more fun to write in the sense that I had a little bit more freedom in what she does and says. And also, of course, she's Irish and I'm Irish as well. And she comes from a place in Ireland where I live. And she's really impacted by the landscape of Ireland and a passion for independence for Ireland. So I think she was the most fun to write. And she's kind of a bit complex, a bit torn between two sides. And I like her conflict. If I could time travel to 18th century France for a day, the first thing I would do is I would see if I could visit Marie Antoinette, because she's quite intriguing as well. What would the first thing I would do is, yeah, I think I'd head off to Versailles and see if I could get into her private rooms. I'm not interested in the grand salon and the court etiquette, but Marie Antoinette had her own little private rooms hidden behind the public salons where she played music and hung out with her friends and played cards. So I wouldn't mind hanging out with Marie Antoinette and listening to her play some music and again, seeing what she was really like. Yeah, I think I'd go to Versailles. Which setting was harder to write, Ireland or France? I think it has to be France because I live in Ireland. So obviously that's easier to write. So I'm living in a setting where all the Irish scenes are. So I could just walk up my door and really feel that energy in the landscape and imagine those characters. So France was more challenging to write, but I did travel a lot to France. I've been to France a lot and I spent a lot of time in Versailles. But yes, there was a lot of historical accuracy that I needed to make sure I got right. So France was a bit more challenging. If the Tarot Reader of Versailles was made into a film, who would I cast as the lead? Wow. Well, I've thought about this a bit actually, and I know who I would love to play Caitlin is the actor Alison Oliver. She is an amazing Irish actor. She was in Conversations with Friends, Sally Rooney's Conversations with Friends. She played the main character, and she was also in Wuthering Heights. She played Isabella Linton, and her performance blew my mind. And I would love her as Caitlin. I think she'd have that kind of passionate, vibrant response to the character. And then my other ideal actor is a bit left field, actually, but I think she would be amazing as Mademoiselle Lenormand is Zendaya. She has this kind of ephemeral quality, this mysteriousness to her, and also kind of a dark edge. I saw her in the movie Challengers, and I thought she was phenomenal. So yeah, I think she'd be really cool, actually. Yeah, so hopefully they're available. When historical fact and plot collide, what wins, fact or fiction? I think, in fact, neither. I think you have to balance them both. I really believe this strongly. I think you cannot contradict a historical fact. Um, and I think you can weave your plot. I mean, it's like a creative constraint. So I think you can weave your plot so that you don't contradict. You can't contradict an important date. I mean, that's just not on. But I do think fiction has a slight edge because you can imagine things that aren't documented, look at the gaps and the spaces in between a story. And, for instance, it's not documented that Marie Antoinette went to Lenormand as the tarot reader. However, her best friend was obsessed with tarot reading. She played cards all the time. So I joined the dots and I thought it's very likely she might have done so. But I do think fiction wins. It has to. I'm a novelist. What one thing would I like readers to take away from the Tarot Reader of Versailles? I think I would love readers to take away the fact that there are so many amazing women involved in the history of the French Revolution and the Terror. And certainly when I was at school and was taught about the French Revolution, which has always fascinated me, I was never told the women's stories. So I would love readers to walk away from the book and feel they've been swept away by kind of adventurous, epic love story, but at the same time that they've learned so much about women in the period. And these women, they've reappraised maybe their views on Marie Antoinette, who did not say, let them eat cake. And they've also become acquainted with Republican women and what they wanted to do, and figures such as William de Gouges, who wrote the Declaration of Rights for the Female Citizen in response to the Declaration of Rights for Men. And we don't know about her. And she wrote that before Mary Wollstonecraft. So I think I would love people to walk away knowing a lot more about women in history.